Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. Good morning to you all. We are always expected in our commercial contracts to deliver on time, and you guys like to give us penalty clauses if we don't, so we will try our best in the session to keep to that. It's an interesting idea to put together the guys from the dark side, the commercial side, on the opening slot of the last day. It's been a long conference, and hopefully some of the things that we'll talk about, we haven't compared notes, so there could be some surprises. But the things that we're going to talk about should be judged, and I would hope that you will judge them as our observations and comments from quite a lot of cumulative experience. So there's three suppliers of identification devices going to come at you one after the other, 1, 2, 3. But you know what? Collectively, we've got quite a bit of experience. Nobody has actually ever added it up. But if you were to even try, there is well in excess of 1 billion numbers which have come into the global marketplace from the three supplying businesses who are proud sponsors of the event. So we've seen some things good, average, and some things which have been not so good. And hopefully we can share some of those. Klaus from Datamas is bigger than me physically, so it's pretty clear how we stand on this one. But the message is that it's not a fight. To achieve some things in this industry, it's not a fight. If we try to fight each other, we won't go forwards. Okay, we're here to exchange things. So the conference in the last 2 days has made a lot of statements, and for me the key ones, which anyway stole some things that I would have said, what's driven by the public sector does not perform very well. That was said by the public sector itself. For us in the private sector, that issues a challenge, and we need each other. It's a symbiotic relationship. Okay, so we need to make sure that the partnerships can work together. We've heard also that any identification system needs to be visible. And it's not a rule, it's not written in any guideline anywhere. But in animals around the world which are destined for or could end up being eaten, please put the number on the outside. And for animals which are not destined to be eaten, and I mean eaten by us, then no problem to think about putting the number on the inside. But livestock traceability has to be visual. Animal identification will not stop theft. It's been mentioned a dozen times at least. It maybe is a deterrent to it, and the little comment in black underneath might not sound particularly polite or helpful, but it's just an honest observation. Do something about it yourself actually means make sure it doesn't happen to you. That might push it to your neighbor. He doesn't want it either, so he will push it to his neighbor, and slowly but surely it will radiate out from a central point. And there's some really good concrete examples of that already happening even in Africa. 3 plans to make something happen. That's actually a mistake. You need 4 plans to make something happen. You have to have a strategic plan, you have to have an implementation and an execution plan. But every single project also needs a contingency plan, because things change. You set off with great intentions, the rules change, the guidelines change, the animals change, the weather changes, the disease status changes. You have to be able to react to those things. So please make a contingency plan for that. I'm not going to go through products and what are they called and how do you get them, and I don't think my colleagues are necessarily going to do that either. But we've got an A to Z range of tools in the identification toolbox, from simple blank ear tags that you can write what you like with a felt pen on them. Yes, it's permanent, yes, it's flexible, but it's no use to try and build any program around that because you can't control what gets written on the tag. But if you're looking to start some performance recording with 1,000 cows shared between 20 people in one small region of one bigger region of an even bigger country, it is at least a starting point to give each animal its own identification. We go through visual tags. Other people will talk about what you can put on them. Let's not get complicated. We are ready to make what you need for your program. We've got the ability to be flexible about that. We can customize it. You can move to RFID, EID, digital. It's been called many things. But don't move to it until you've understood the commitment it will take for resources, because you have to read the information in the tag electronically. Otherwise, if you're going to actually read visually what we programmed inside a chip and only read it visually, what's the point of having the chip in the first place? You can go to taking tissue samples. You can start to think about performance recording with genetics and genomics and all kinds of very advanced things. We're ready for all of those things. You can store the samples that you're taking. You can make archives of genetic profiles. So we're ready from A to Z. We're sitting waiting, and we would like to engage with our observations and experience to help you set up a sensible project which has building blocks in it. The majority of Africa, from both sides and top to bottom, already has lots of examples of traditional identification. There's brands, there's notches, there's horn marks, there's all sorts of things. They might work for groups, they might have worked for many decades, but they don't work for individuals. And actually, if you want to record anything about anyone in a livestock population, you have to start to move to individual things. So don't throw them away, but build your new system on top of it. We have a lot of programs, a lot of customers who are using their brand mark, and they're asking us to print their brand mark on their tag. We have a lot of regional, national, competent authority programs who could think about doing that as a very easy stepping stone to move from the traditional into an upgrade that allows you to advance. And this might sound strange, because I don't want to devalue at all of the time and the investment and the work that's gone into making the tags and the identification devices, because there's ISO standards and ICAR standards and there's guidelines from many people, and we're very proud to support that. In fact, we want to push those forward ourselves. But please treat the tag as the commodity. We can't make a different device for every sub-region of every country in Africa, let alone the world. There's only so many colors, and there's only so many shapes. So take the tag as a commodity and customize it for yourself using the printing, the options for numbering, coding, okay? That's, to a large extent, open for interpretation as you need it for your program. But please, we get a lot of requests for, we would like this shape and that color, but please reserve it for only us. It makes life difficult for your neighbors, and we're supposed to be cooperating and sharing experiences. It's an old hobby horse of all of the guys in the identification world. If you put it in properly, you won't believe us, you never do. It was designed to stay in. If you don't put it in properly at the start, then you are just creating yourself more work. And it's interesting that even at something like this symposium, on each of our booths, there's information about how to put the tag in correctly. And that's after 50 years of putting tags in animals. So we're still fighting that fight. You can customize depending on where you are in your program. Everybody's talking about trying to reinvent the wheel. Everybody's talking about going from 0 to 100 in an incredibly quick time. Everybody's talking about going for EID and RFID and huge databases with immense power behind them. Ken Evers spoke yesterday about the system in Australia, and he mentioned it, but I'm not sure it sank in. There's 20 years worth of experience behind that. You don't just create it in a meeting room on a whiteboard and start next month. Okay, so let's take baby steps. There's lots of messages that we could try to leave you with, but one of them is that the number is actually only serving for one thing in an identification program. It's the key to open the database. It's what gets you to the right chapter or the right file that you then have to complete. So it's enabling you to put information in and equally to get information out. It's not for me to talk about databases, somebody else will do that. But just in 5 minutes, I can sit down, and in 5 minutes I came up with 17 different pieces of data that would be logical to record. If I sat down for 30 minutes with myself, that 17 would become maybe 35. Stop trying to fly. Pick the first 5 or 6 maybe, and just get a start. Trust yourself to make a start. And the experience that you pick up will teach you which direction to take as you develop the program. So you're building your system with blocks of data, and think about how to put the blocks together. You're not going to reinvent the wheel. There's lots of people who can help you and steer you, tell you the good things and the bad things. And think of it like a book. You don't open a book on chapter 1, or if you do and you find out who killed him, you don't read the rest of the book. So in chapter 1 we have to set the basic information, and chapter 2 and 3, and so it develops. So take the basic thing in chapter 1 and build on it. It's not prescriptive, you can change it. Yeah? Guidelines are not prescriptive. You can take the ones that are good for you. You don't have to tick them all. Back to the little discussion about theft. And in one of the breakout sessions yesterday, there was a big heated discussion, or not heated, a passionate discussion about if I'm the first guy who puts tags in my cows, they're going to stand out, and I'm not sure I want my cows to stand out. Turn it on its head. If they all have a tag, the one which doesn't have a tag stands out. So the real aim for the program, if you find one without identification, that's the one you need to find out about and interrogate. Why has it not got any identification? It's the easiest clue to start to look for violations. But it means you've got to start, you've got to jump in. Very simple, it's a couple of minutes. A very simple program which unfortunately had to stop because I'm going to make light of it, but they decided it was better to start and shoot each other again. So the project was put on ice. But in South Sudan 2 years ago, they started a very simple project to identify 150,000 animals with one sole objective, and that was to deter theft. Nothing to do with health, nothing to do with epidemiology, nothing to do with breeding records, performance recording, just to stop theft. They built a database. It had 5 fields in it. Whose is it? When did we tag it? What number was it? What breed and sex was the cow? And who's the owner? That's it. They gave the database to the village chiefs. They gave the database to the police. That was it. That's the program. And they got started, and they tagged some cows. So this guy was the first guy in South Sudan to have ever a tag in his cow. He had 33 animals, and number 1 was allocated to this guy. And he was the biggest doom and gloom naysayer. What on earth are we doing? But the village chief said, if we get all the animals in our village tagged, the thieves will go to the next village. That sounds very selfish. But you know what? Sometimes the really simple practical bits are the place to start. And keep building and opening geographically then your program. That's it, from my point of view. We can go round and round the circle for many times, but the message is incredibly clear. Start small, start simple, have some confidence, put one step into the void, and there's lots of people who are going to help you. Thank you.